Good day, everyone. It's a real honor to welcome today's guest, a tireless advocate for human rights and religious freedom across Asia. Benedict Rogers is the senior director at Fortify Rights and co founder and trustee of Hong Kong Watch. With nearly 3 decades of experience at Christian Solidarity worldwide, Benedict has been on the front lines of defending freedom of belief and exposing authoritarian repression. He is the author of 7 books, including From Burma to Rome, A Journey into the Catholic Church, and most recently, The China Nexus, 30 years in and around the Chinese Communist Party's tyranny. A recipient of multiple international awards, Benedict continues to be one of the most informed voices on China's global strategies and the human cost of authoritarianism. Thank you, Benedict, for joining us today. And we are going to focus on his latest article published on April of 10th in the Telegraph titled Trump's Tariff Might Spell the End of China, which offers a bold and timely analysis of China's internal vulnerabilities and the shifting global responses. Benedict, thank you for joining us today. We truly appreciate your time and your continued commitment to speaking truth to power.
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. So let me begin by referencing a powerful line from your recent article where you wrote, "It is time we recognize China is the greatest national and economic threat of our times." In your view, what would an ideal multilateral strategy look like to counter this threat without descending into a new Cold War?
Well, I think an ideal multilateral strategy is one that brings together like-minded countries that face the challenge that the Chinese regime poses. And I should add, the headline in that article was a little misleading because I am not anti-China. Indeed, I love the country of China. I've spent a lot of time in China. I have many friends in China. It's the Chinese Communist Party regime that I oppose. And so it would have been better if the headline had talked about the end of the CCP rather than China. But I think a multilateral strategy should bring together countries that either share democratic values, but also countries that are increasingly threatened by the regime in Beijing, either economically or in terms of security. And the more we can unite the free world against the CCP, the more likely we are to achieve positive results.
Certainly. That brings us naturally to the economic front. One of the tools of multilateral strategy is, of course, trade policy. And in the Trump era, tariffs have sparked a lot of debate. What is your take on this?
Well, as I say in my article, I would have preferred more targeted sanctions against companies in China that are closely aligned with the CCP or with the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, companies that directly threaten security or are directly complicit with human rights violations. I would have preferred that rather than broad-based tariffs that plunge us all into a new trade war. Nevertheless, I think that President Trump, initially he imposed high tariffs on lots of countries, which I think was a mistake. He then pulled back from that and focused primarily on China. And I think that is, in that context, a much better move. And I hope that it will increase the pressure on Xi Jinping and that Xi Jinping will be the first to blink, I hope.
Great. And do you believe that US has a coherent long-term plan to economically decouple from China, or is this still largely reactive policymaking?
I think it's early days and it's probably too soon to say, but I certainly hope that the US will have a long-term plan. Decoupling from China clearly can't be done overnight. I mean, all of our economies are so integrated with China's that that task will take time. But I think initially the step of diversifying our supply chains, of de-risking our investments is an important first step towards decoupling.
Moving ahead on this, supply chains are now at the heart of geopolitical thinking. Where do you see the global order moving towards?
Again, it's hard to predict, but I hope very much that we will move in the direction of diversifying our supply chains. We saw through the COVID-19 pandemic what a mistake it was to be so overly dependent on China for some of our key needs, including in the fields of pharmaceuticals, of rare earths and critical minerals. Now in the green energy world, China is the major provider of solar panels. So diversifying our supply chain so that we reduce dependency on China is absolutely vital in my view. And the other thing we should be doing that doesn't get talked about enough is trying to address the issue of slave labor or forced labor in supply chains. And that is coming from partly from the Uyghurs in China's western Xinjiang province, but also it's been well documented that prison labor is being used for the production of goods in supply chains. And that also needs to be addressed, and we should eliminate forced labor and prison labor from supply chains.
Absolutely. Talking about the dependencies on China, which sectors do you see as the most vulnerable to supply chain disruptions? And how can democracies like India, Japan, and South Korea step up as credible alternatives?
Well, I think some of the sectors that I just mentioned, pharmaceuticals, rare earth and critical minerals, solar panels, also, of course, textiles, are all overly dependent on China and at great risk from disruption. And I think that the countries you mentioned, India, Japan, South Korea, other places as well, I mean, Taiwan, I think other parts of Southeast Asia like Indonesia, Malaysia, can all contribute in some ways. I think the challenge, of course, will be not so much in the pharmaceuticals or textiles, which I think can more easily be diversified to other countries, but the rare earths and critical minerals, where China has obviously a large supply, those will be harder to replace from other markets, but we should certainly be looking for alternatives.
Absolutely. And talking about your article, you have also mentioned that shifting supply chains and economic pressures can also have a domestic impact within China. And you have also written about the potential for internal unrest in China due to rising unemployment and other sort of problems. What indicators should the world watch for to assess whether popular dissent against the CCP is reaching a critical level?
Well, we should certainly be paying attention to any form of protest that takes place in China. We have seen in recent years discontent rise. We saw it particularly in the what became known as the White Paper movement, protests against the very draconian COVID lockdowns in China. But it's also on a lesser scale the case that regularly there are protests regarding labor rights and working conditions across China. And as China's economy slows down, which it was already doing quite significantly even before the tariffs, I suspect that discontent will grow, particularly if there are job losses and other social challenges. So we should be watching for any form of discontent, any form of protest, and we should stand ready to support the Chinese people if they do choose to rise up against Xi Jinping.
Absolutely. And talking about the unrest in China, authoritarian regimes often respond to internal tensions by looking outwards and sometimes aggressively. And in China's case, Taiwan comes to mind here. And you have also highlighted that Xi Jinping's obsession with face and ideological rigidity is there. How serious is the risk of China escalating tensions over Taiwan in response to its internal economic pressure?
I think the risk is increasingly serious. It has long been the case that Xi Jinping, and he's made this clear himself, that he sees Taiwan as his legacy issue. If you think that Mao Zedong's legacy was the founding of the People's Republic of China, Deng Xiaoping's legacy was the opening up of China's economy. I think Xi sees his potential legacy as he would put it, the reunification of China with Taiwan. And that has been the case, and his aggression towards Taiwan has increased in recent years. We've seen more and more flights by the People's Liberation Army into Taiwanese airspace, ships off Taiwan's coast. And I think that as domestic economic challenges grow, Xi's card will be the nationalist card. He will want to try to stir up nationalist sentiment. And the easiest way for him to do that is to further intensify his aggression towards Taiwan. Whether that results in an all-out military assault on Taiwan or a blockade of Taiwan, we'll have to see. And I wouldn't want to predict when it will take place. I think Xi will only move against Taiwan if he thinks he can do so successfully, because he will know that a failed military attack on Taiwan will hasten his demise even further. But I think the risks for Taiwan are growing by the day.
And while Taiwan is often in the headlines, many miss the subtle but growing tactics of influence by the CCP. I see a Free Jimmy Lai poster just behind you, and which reminded me that the honorable journalists have been in arrest, let's say from 3 years, I believe, more than that. And he is not the only journalist who has faced the brunt from the Beijing's authoritarianism. We have seen other instances as well. Where do you see that the world should move to protect journalists and other activists from the CCP?
Well, that's a very important question, and you're absolutely right. There are other journalists besides Jimmy Lai who are in prison in Hong Kong and in mainland China, and increasingly foreign correspondents as well have found China an increasingly challenging environment to work in. So I definitely think that democracies around the world should be speaking out much more about the importance of press freedom, about the well-being and security of journalists. And the British government in particular, because Jimmy Lai is a British citizen, should be doing much more to put pressure on China for his release. But all of our governments that believe in democracy should be acting to seek the release of imprisoned journalists or threatened journalists in China.
Talking about democracies, at Red Lantern Analytica, we track China's transnational repression network as well. How do you access Beijing's growing influence operations in Western democracies, especially across universities and civil societies?
Yes, this is a really alarming development. Just in recent weeks, we have seen reports of a number of exiled Hong Kong activists in the UK, in Australia, and in other countries being targeted. Anonymous letters have been sent to their neighbors, offering their neighbors a financial reward. I think it was $1 million Hong Kong dollars for handing over those individual exiled Hong Kong activists to the Chinese embassy, or providing the Chinese embassy with information on their movements and whereabouts. And that's a very serious threat to them, but also to our freedoms and security. On top of that, as you've mentioned, we see threats on our university campuses, the role of Confucius institutes that directly undermine academic freedom and freedom of expression. I know one Chinese student, mainland Chinese student, who has received threats and attacks because he's been critical of the CCP. We've also seen members of parliament in the UK being sanctioned by China. And even I myself have received over the years anonymous threatening letters at my home. And my mother even has received letters telling her to tell me to shut up. So these are all really outrageous interventions in our societies, and particularly for the exiled diaspora communities, not only Hong Kongers, but also Tibetans, Uyghurs, exiled Chinese dissidents. They've come to our countries, whether it's the UK, Canada, Australia, the United States, because they thought they would be safe here and free here. And they should not be subjected to these kinds of threats. So transnational repression is something we should be taking extremely seriously.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of this informative session. Thank you so much, Benedict, for your incredible insights and for helping us navigate the complex web of challenges posed by the Chinese Communist Party, that is the CCP. Your decades of work from the front lines of human rights advocacy to the powerful words in your latest article continue to inform, inspire, and awaken global consciousness on issues that truly matter. We are deeply grateful for your time and perspective today. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope this conversation has given you valuable food for thought and a deeper understanding of the geopolitical shifts unfolding around us. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Thank you.